So we have the ability to speak. Right? Dibur. Right, that's the world. And with our speech, we are able to create society. We're able to communicate ideas and emotions to other people. And by the way, it is the way that the Kadosh Baruch Hu, God, communicates to us. How do you know what He wants?
Torah.
How do you know what He wants? What's Torah? God's speech. But it's His speech. So the way that we also communicate to God is through our intellect and through speech. So I'm going to give some examples that the Alei Shur talks about the importance of speech. But there's lots more examples that you could think of without me. But I'm just going to use some of them. So the first one, for example, is the Mishnah in Avos, the two people who are studying Torah. Right? They're exchanging the words of Torah with one another. The presence of God appears before them. They don't see it, but it's there, the Shekhinah. Okay? But if one person is there by himself and learning Torah, you don't get the Shekhinah according to the Maharal. So one thing is that when we learn Torah, when Gabriel sits with Joe in Shur and they are talking about words of Torah, or David is sitting with Yudah and arguing about the meaning, or whether it's Max and Ronnie, whoever it is, two of you, then those words that are exchanging brings the Shekhinah, because you are using speech to talk about the Torah. Another example of the power of words is tshuva. When we do tshuva, the Rambam says we are required to do a vidui. A vidui is what? Anybody? Confession. Which means we have to articulate, we have to use words to say what we did wrong. It's not enough just thinking about it, saying, Kadosh Baruch Hu, I'm sorry that I ate cheese after meat and not wait 6 hours. Right? That's not enough just to think about it. You have to say it. You have to articulate the word. That's what the Rambam says, that you have to say it, because if you don't do a vidui and you're trying to do tshuva, you're trying to repent, it's as if you're holding on to an object, to an entity that's impure, while going into the mikveh. You can go into the mikveh as many times as you want. Unless you let go of the piece of shrimp that you're holding, you're not going to have atonement. So the Medrash says that a person who confesses is similar to a person that glues that, what do you call it in English? I forgot the word. You know when you use a blowtorch, 2 pieces of metal to connect? Weld. There you go, weld. That you're trying to weld 2 things together. Weld 2 things together. Okay, so what does that mean? It says that the tshuva welds the relationship between you and Hashem back together. Because the sin sort of breaks it, right? Because you're going to a place where the Kadosh Baruch Hu doesn't want you to go. And the articulation of the sin with the meaning of that I'm returning to you, Hashem, is a form of welding or gluing the broken pieces together. That's the idea. And that we see as the power of speech, because it requires speaking. There's lots and lots of material about Lashon Hara, of speaking ill of people. We're not going to get into it now. But what you see is that our tool that God gave us, the ability to speak, is something that either brings us together or pushes us apart. Right? You could say one thing to bring people closer to you, and you could say there's one thing that makes people go away from you. All depends on what you say. And that power of either building society or breaking up society, connecting to the Kadosh Baruch Hu, or disconnecting from the Kadosh Baruch Hu, is all in your hand or in your mouth. It's the power of speech. Okay. Now, speech, says the Alei Shur, is like a violin. Yes, a violin. You don't have to do pantomime. A violin. And what makes the sound of violin so beautiful? Is it just the strings?
The player.
Is it just the string? No, we're talking about not the player. The player. The
body.
box itself, correct. The body itself. Right. There's an echo, right? So you see that the words that we use come from this little box that we call our body. When a child is born, there's a little baby, they can make noises with their mouth. Correct? But they don't really know how to speak. But then they start having control. They know how to say more, more. It's one of the first things they learn. But the idea is this, that in the beginning, he doesn't know how to use the tool correctly. He's learning. The baby is learning. But once you get old enough, you realize that with this tool, you could either come together, that is, bring people closer to you, or you could use this tool to drive people away from you, depending on what you say. So we see it's really an art. It's not a science. It's an art that you have to learn how to use your mouth. Fair enough? Everybody with me? Okay. So says the Alei Shur that this art in this world is for us to be mute. You're all supposed to be jumping out of your chairs, saying, what? According to Chazal, the use of this art, of the ability to speak, is that we should use it to be silent. Right? It's a tool that God gave us that we can use to connect to people and to God. And it is an art form. And the first thing is that we should learn to be quiet. So the idea is this. The art is to know to be quiet. And this is something that we need to learn. That is, when a child learns to speak, they start babbling. But you have to learn to be quiet. You have to learn to be silent. Okay? Speech is natural. But to be quiet is an art form that you need to master. And how do we find out that a person has that, has knowledge, that is intelligent, that is smart? When he knows when to keep his mouth shut. It's not only knowing what to say, it's when we know when to be quiet. Sometimes I ask questions and people try to answer them without realizing they are rhetorical questions. And then I say, it's a rhetorical question. So yeah, I can answer that. No, it's a rhetorical question. You're not supposed to answer that. This idea of silence is connected to the idea of solitude. Solitude, being alone. When you're alone, you don't need to talk. Only in solitude will we be able to learn about our abilities and what we need to refine. When we leave our solitude and join other people, then we can use speech to connect to the world outside of us. So we see from here that in Torah we need to speak. We need to speak. The words of Torah need to be spoken. You have to get them out. And we have to understand that we have to work on being quiet, to know when not to speak, and therefore know what sort of speech is appropriate when. And that takes a lifetime. There are people, and we don't want to give any examples, now, but I'm sure if you read the news, there are people in the news that don't seem to know what to say or how to say it and when to say it and all sorts of things that are going on. Okay. So, we are moving to a next quality that we have, next aspect of human experience, that is called Bechira. What's Bechira? Free will. Free will means that you have the ability to choose between alternatives. And it doesn't have to be between two alternatives, Shlomo, right and wrong. It could be right, maybe more, maybe less. That is, you have a whole bunch of things to choose from. It all depends. Okay. So, the simple understanding of free will, or Bechira, is how do we use our abilities in various situations. How shall I use my speech? How shall I use my, let's say, power? How shall I use my hands, my feet, my eyes, my ears, my mind? All the things that I have, how to use them and when. That's essentially what free will means on the most basic level. Correct? Am I going to cut in line or am I not going to cut in line? Am I going to come to class or not come to class? I'm going to put my head down and sleep during class, or am I going to pay attention? Right? All these things are choices that we are going to make. Right? Okay. So the Gemara says in Shabbos, Kuf Nun Vav, towards the end, the Gemara says that the constellations, natural forces, affect the human being. That it's possible that a person who is born under a particular sign would have a particular nature. Rav Ashi says that a person who is born under a particular sign will have an inclination to spill blood. And so then the question is, will that person choose to be a murderer, to be a moel, to be a shoichet, slaughter animals, or to be a physician? There's choices. Yes, you have your natural tendencies of who you are. The question is, what are you going to use that for? Are you going to use it to do good or to do evil? So, as we said, Rav Ashi says, as the person who has this sense, this propensity or a natural inclination to spill blood, it could either be a physician or a thief that may have to murder, right? Carjacker. Or a shoichet, somebody who slaughters animals, or a moel, a person who does circumcisions. All of them spill blood. But the question is, which one is the highest form that a person should choose? So a person who does bris milah, a moel, right, only spills blood for a mitzvah. A shoichet is a person who spills blood, right, so that people can eat. But there's no requirement to eat meat. You don't have to. So a person shoichet is not doing a mitzvah when he's slaughtering because nobody has to eat. But if somebody wants to eat, then there's a mitzvah to slaughter. Okay? And a physician, he saves people's lives. Right? But only a carjacker is the example that we gave, spills blood for evil. That is a very, very important decision that a person is going to make. Because when a person makes a decision, let's say that he's going to, I don't know, rob a liquor store, then you are starting sort of a path of a destiny that is going to shape your life differently than if you decided not to rob the liquor store. Right? Because if you rob the liquor store, you may have to use your weapon. If you may have to use your weapon, you may kill somebody. And then if you kill somebody while on a crime, it's a death penalty case. Right? Whatever. I'm just saying, and you get captured and you have to run away. It's sort of one nikuda of bechira, one decision made in a point in time requires other decisions to be made along that path. You all made a decision to come to yeshiva. That sort of changed the trajectory of the decisions that you were making. You were sort of living a life going like this, and then you make a decision here. And now there's a split, and you're here, and here, and here, and here. You just keep making decisions. And those decisions that you're making affect the choices that you're going to have in front of you. Right? Usually it's not the choice, hey, do you want to rob the liquor store or learn Chumash Rashi? How do we come to make decisions that bring good to the world? How is it that we have the ability to make decisions that are good in the absolute sense, from God's perspective? But that's already a decision that you make. I mean, if somebody dropped the Torah in front of you, you have to open the book and read it. What made you open the book and read the Torah and close the book and said, this stuff is not for me? Or this can't be. There are people who actually grew up with the Torah and left. So to say that it's just the Torah, that's not enough. It's like we don't understand what's happening when we have free will. And you all made a decision to come here. Chazal says, the bechira betov, the choice that we make to choose good, is called, you ready for this? Yirat shamayim. Fear of heaven. That's what we mean. How does a person choose? When a person chooses good, that's called yirat shamayim. That the person has yirat shamayim. So there's a Gemara, very famous Gemara in Nida, that there's an angel that brings every fertilized egg, right, of a woman's fertilized egg to God. And it asks, Master of the world, is this going to be Gibar or Chalash, mighty or weak, wise or a fool, wealthy or poor? But the Gemara says, but it doesn't say Rasha or Tzaddik. Rasha or Tzaddik, it doesn't ask. Whether a person is going to be righteous or evil, it doesn't ask. All the other factors get determined. But the point of this Gemara is to say that Kadeh Amar Rabbi Chanina, Kadeh Rabbi Chanina de Amar, Hakol bidei shamayim, chutz mirat shamayim. Everything is in control of heaven. God controls everything, except the choice that you make to be a good person or not. That's called yirat shamayim. You have a choice. You can be waiting for the bus and miss the bus, right? You can get on a bus, there's no place to sit. The question is, how do you behave? That's up to you. You don't control if the bus is going to be on time. You don't control if you're going to have a seat. What? You control how you react to the things that are thrown at you. There's an idea that yirat shamayim is something that even a non-religious person can have. And it's something that even a religious person might not have. And just because you believe in the Torah, that doesn't mean automatically you get yirat shamayim. And just because you don't believe in the Torah, doesn't mean that you don't have yirat shamayim. Because there's people who believe in God, who believe to do the right thing, and do the right thing. But they haven't had the opportunity to learn Torah. It's not me saying. It's the Alei Shur is bringing. Yeah. 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 Because, and the reason that he knows is because he inherited a set of values from his ancestors. That he knows that if somebody knocks on the door, you give them money. We either have an ability to choose to do good, or we could choose to do the opposite of good. So Rabbeinu Yonah explains that Bechira, the free will, the decisions that we make, there are lots and lots of different levels. And he says like this, there's a conversation between Job. I don't know if you guys ever read the book of Job. But Job argues with his friends that come to visit him. And Job says something like this, that the human being, because he has the Yetzer Hara in him, has to sin. Has to sin. And therefore, he's going to get, it's not fair that he's punished. Because he can't avoid doing what he's doing. That is who he is. It's there. His friends say, no, this idea violates the concept of Yirat Shamayim, a fear of heaven. Why? Because a person is not obligated to sin. If he has Yirat Shamayim, then this Yirat Shamayim would cause him not to sin. You get it? You have in you, when you develop Yirat Shamayim, you have in a way of making the decisions, or making the choosing the good. And this is something that is considered like a spice that you add to a food. It makes it taste better. That's the idea. It makes it sweet so that you can eat. So, Chachamim say that when a person has koach bechira, he has the ability to choose. It's true that he has the Yetzer Hara, but when you have the Yirat Shamayim with the Torah that he's learning, then that would give him an out of the negative effects of his Yetzer Hara. That is, he has a way out. But it all depends. You have to make the decision. It's up to you. You have to make a decision. The same way that you make a decision, chicken or beef, you have to make a decision. Am I coming to class to sleep or to learn? Am I going to daven with kavana, or am I going to just space it out? It's a decision that you're going to have to make.